council rules would be a good way to assign to them and then bring back as we begin to form them. So we can add public safety to this. I kind of feel like it should be separate. But we could start this way. I see a head shaking over there. You think it should be separate?
I think that, listening to what you just talked about, there are two different focal groups.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about some of the people that did come to this meeting, we had some citizens that were concerned what happens if the dam broke, kind of thing.
Okay.
And is the city prepared? And as we talk about wildfire and those kinds of things, I think it would be appropriate to have them separate. That's my
Okay.
opinion.
Council? You think it should be separate? Okay.
If we can get involvement as citizens.
And that's the other thing, there is always that, we open them up to the public and say who would like to be on what, and.
Might be
depending on-
surprised there is.
Okay, all right, well, let's make sure that we make that as a recommendation. So admin committee, currently Rusty and Rick are on that. We have 2 more places that are available, and we still have those asks out and we'll appoint people. So admin committee, then the next one is, the Oakridge Library. They're going great guns, they do great things, they're active. I personally don't think there's any changes or anything that we want to do to them, because they the committee that stays going, all by themselves. Question?
Is there openings on that? There's supposed to be 7, right?
7 voting members, and they currently have, 6? 5?
I'm on that committee also, but I was, came onto the committee even before, it was, I can't remember the date. Georgie has it because I went on vacation, they put me in as the chair of the library board while I was on vacation.
See what happens
I'm trying to
when you go
remember
on
what day
vacation?
it was, I think mine is up in I think next year is 2020 is when I go off of it.
Okay.
Either one of Rusty or the other one doesn't have any time, or they just didn't put it in yet.
Very new.
Oh, it's brand new. Yeah, and I'm sorry, you're right, I should have plugged that in and I didn't. They were, Rick, that was last October or something like that.
Yeah,
Wasn't it?
last October.
Yeah,
We haven't held a meeting due to
No.
all the other things that are going on right now, but
yeah,
someday.
Yeah, I was on it.
and you were on it too.
Yeah.
weren't you?
I worked, but
You were, you was.
I worked.
So as we're talking about these
Yeah.
committees, also let's talk about, if you're interested in being the chair, if you're interested in being the council appointee. So, speak up.
I would be interested.
You would be interested in that? Okay.
But I also have an interest in the library.
On being on the library board? Okay. Or the
Yeah.
council rep for the library
Yes.
board? Okay, so the next one that we have on our list is Parks and Community Services. Rick, I don't know a lot about this other than what I pulled out of the ordinance. So can you give us an example of some of the things that they have done in the past or are doing?
So mainly this time they just, we review what the city's been doing, update them, and it's just another place for updating. There really hasn't been any products that came out of that committee, other than discussion, another forum to, discuss potential
How do you
changes.
see it being used by council?
I see it being used by the council for, example, I get a recommendation from them to either approve or disapprove the National Park Service, grant. Well, not grant, but the outcome of that grant. I would love to see a letter written from that committee saying, yes, we like this, or, and that letter would of course be you guys.
What is the community services aspect of that?
The community services aspect,
Aspect of
the public work pieces, so they get updates on the water project, they get updates on all the public work projects. There's yet to be any real product come out of that group in those aspects yet,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so do you think this committee would, as I was going through this and looking at this and thinking about community services, would this be a committee that would look at the needs assessment as far as, so perhaps, senior citizen needs assessment?
Absolutely.
Preschool needs assessments, yeah, things like that, sort of that were community service oriented, so if you think about, I mean, would that be appropriate to do?
That question has definitely come up in the group, and there has been a lot of members of the group that would love to pursue those.
Okay,
I don't think that would be inappropriate, I would actually encourage it,
okay.
especially if their desires to move them forward will get better momentum.
And currently, we don't have any members,
No, we do, we have,
because I didn't plug any in here,
oh,
so that was my bad,
we need 3, I believe. And I
Okay.
don't have the agenda item from the end of last year that identified them.
okay, well, I probably have it, and I think I just skipped over it as I was learning this, so we'll have it. Sounds like you think you have 3 more.
Wasn't this,
Sorry?
wasn't this committee was one when they got to put the new parks in town? It was pretty active again, wasn't it, about 7, 8 years ago?
You know, I can't answer this 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know, I'm not sure, I really don't know.
I believe it was
Okay.
really active, and that's why we got the parks and stuff.
Could be. Yeah. So, you know, let me back up as far as no official product, because a couple months ago, I requested signage for all of our parks. That is an example of something that came out of that committee. One of the committee members, we were talking about locations of a possible disc golf baskets at Osprey Park. I said, hey, meet me at Osprey Park. I said, I don't know how to get there. So, with stuff like that, we,
Awesome.
you know, out of that meeting came, hey, we need signage to our parks, and then of course I brought it to you guys. So, that's an example of some of the products we've gotten out of there. So,
So I ask, just typically with staff, and as much as you can answer this, would staff also bring information and say, hey, council, could you ask this committee to do X, Y, Z? I mean, if you ran into something that was, it seemed like, well, that would be really appropriate to have them look at that and give them, it's not a matter of giving them work to do, because our volunteers are valuable, and I don't wanna waste your time. You know, we didn't waste our time, but you guys don't. So,
no, but you want to feel like they're
but I want them to feel like they're
appreciated.
appreciated and they have things to do without just making up things. So if committees were moving and active, that would be something that staff could also come to council and say, hey, this has come up, I'd love to see a discussion, can we? do
I would not
this?
see a problem with that. I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. Anybody interested in Parks and Community Services to lead? I am, but, I mean, someone has to take something that I'm doing. Okay, all right, silence. All right, so, next one on the list is ODAC. Now, ODAC is a little bit different creature. It has a new resolution that was just created. They are created to advise the council and the city, and city staff, about economic development, both in the city of Oakridge as well as the industrial park. They have, rules that are a little bit more stringent than the other committees. They ask for participation from members that have experience or some kind of experience in business, economic development, accounting, I mean, that kind of level of knowledge. Because they do deal with potential developers, potential investors. There is, a little bit more, currently their guidelines, show that they are not a public meeting, because much of what they deal with is private and sometimes very confidential, so there is that aspect to it. They currently have, a 5 to 7 meeting, 5 to 7 member, list that they can do. They're currently at 5, not 2 4s.
I was looking at that. Kevin Gobelman used to be on there when he was a council, before he was a councilor, then when he was a counselor, he should have dropped off there, and I see him back on there, but reading it, they can just borrow people.
Yes, they can ask people to come ad hoc. So, and I think the reason that they did that is there are times when a potential developer or investor may come and there is a member of the community that has expertise in that area. And so it makes sense to be able to say, would you like to join us for this conversation so we could get some feedback from you? And so they left themselves flexible. I see a thumbs up back there from Rick. I did a good job, Rick. Yeah.
Yes,
I
you're
did.
doing great.
Okay, good. So that's there. There is no council representative on this, is there?
No, the interesting conversation that we had, and it never got resolved, was, the idea was that what we determined since then is we think that these meetings are gonna be open up until the time we start discussing confidential issues.
Right.
And my desire was to I think I talked to you about this, that we would invite a counselor randomly to attend these meetings, and then, of course, once they go to the confidential side of the meeting, everybody leaves except the ODAC members who are privy to the specific issue we're talking about.
Right.
And so my take is I still wanna do that. I still wanna invite randomly someone to come and sit in public as well.
So that's a good point.
I actually give Rick the bylaws of the ODAC committee, when it originated, and it's quite interesting if you read it. It was, it had a lot of that, what you guys are trying to do, it was in that original bylaws.
Right.
That he has.
And those
Yeah.
are the bylaws that they used to do this.
Yeah, the building,
The building.
original.
Yeah, when we rewrote it, we wrote it using, I call it the posted page of ODAC, which looked like just a
And
bunch
Post-it
of
notes all over
post-its
it.
photocopied. And so I rewrote it, got it approved by our group, and then we sent it up to the council.
And then they passed it. So, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about- Oh, as far as council participation in this, I sat on the ODAC committee, all last year.
Yep.
And, and I think there should be council there, but my concern is rather than having a rotating counselor, because you really have to be able to follow the procedure. If you're just popping in, then really what you've done is relegated counselors to, visiting kangaroos. And I don't want that. I would rather, in my opinion, have a counselor appointed to attend.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, well, and to some degree, I agree. I think that maybe in the first year of your sitting up there, my original intent was to have each and every one of them eventually sit in a meeting so they would all know what we do, because it's like a secret society or something. And so in order to really get a feel for what we're doing, if the counselors rotated through, at least for the first 6 meetings, you would all have a really good feel of what we do up until we start discussing specifics.
Right.
You would have a really good idea of what we do, so when you sit up here and we eventually bring a company to you, you all know what we went through to get that company to you. So there's no surprise.
Okay.
20 years of that
Yeah.
ODAC committee. I'll go on the ODAC committee, I'd be the one, I'll go on it.
Okay. Bobby?
So maybe it's worthwhile assigning one of us to it, but then also, in addition, having each of us at least go and participate in one meeting or 2 meetings to learn.
If one was on there, and then another one.
So assign a rep and then have a rotating counselor so that they could go in and listen and see what it's about
And learn, yeah.
and learn. What do you feel about that?
I have no feelings.
Good.
No,
Good answer.
that's fine. However you guys wanna do it. I just
Okay.
would like you guys to get there off and on so you can see what we're doing.
I mean, to give you a little bit of information about it.
Don, you said you were interested in doing that?
Yep.
I'm making that note down. So I do wanna make sure that you all understand that, I am writing down what your preferences are, but this is one of those things that I actually get to decide as mayor, so, just, there you go. I do take chocolate.
Wait, the attorney's still
I
there?
know, the attorney can hear that. Okay, planning commission. As you know, the planning commission is established by charter. That's not, anything that is a resolution. It's also one of those things that we are all aware of that we cannot participate in. because there may be something that is done in the planning commission and a decision that's made that will come to us as an appeal, and we have to be able to listen to the appeal and rule on it and not have to excuse ourselves because we were part of the process.
Because it would be ex parte contact.
That is the word I was looking for.
So then who's the representative that brings the stuff to us from these?
From the planning commission?
Yeah.
So the planning commission is required to report to, quarterly. The planning commission is required to report to the council quarterly. They come and they report any of the activity they have done that is already concluded and the time has passed for an appeal. They can't report anything to us that still is within the appeal timeline, because then, once again, we have information that we're not supposed to have ex parte contact. So they do come quarterly to let us know what's going on. So while it's frustrating as a counselor, I remember being a little bit frustrated. It's like, well, I know this is going on. How come I don't know anything about it on council? Well, it's because the planning commission is taking care of it. And it hasn't gone past that time limit for us to be reported to officially.
But if these people on the planning commission, if things that they've approved came to the council and it's not being approved, then us as a body should go back, get it done. Like certification, for instance, the marijuana place next door to me is supposed to have fencing and supposed to be completely secured, and it still isn't after the period of time that it's been
Then,
there.
now, that is code enforcement. You would go to,
Well, since it would be planning commission, I think it would be a combination between
Right.
yeah.
the two options.
But you would never go to the planning commission, and council would never direct the planning commission.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
and we would just go through, city
Because if it hasn't
administrator.
been done, then it needs to be done.
Right.
And then, in
Compliance.
those regards, especially with that, because that is a conditional use permit, the only things outside of ordinance 874 that we can enforce is things that are a condition placed upon a conditional use permit.
Right.
So,
Right.
So there is no council assignment for the planning commission. Okay, so, next we come to the budget committee. The budget committee is established by ORS.
Yep.
We're gonna be, yeah, and we're all on the budget committee. Woo-hoo! So, be prepared.
oh boy.
Yeah, oh boy,
And
here it comes.
so we're gonna have 7 and 7, so we're gonna have to be 14, right?
Correct. Actually, it'll be more than 14, because we'll have the city administrator there, and department heads will be there. So, yeah, there'll be a lot more people there than just.
We have a
But
list
there's
of,
seven.
I don't get it though. People that are still on it?
It's gotta be equal, not the staff and the rest of it.
And Don brings up a good point. If for some reason a council member says, I cannot attend any of the budget meetings because of X, Y, Z, then we have to adjust the number of public too. Has to stay balanced. And yes, so we know these 3 people were on it, and,
Yeah.
I need to contact them to see if they're still willing to continue. Because there is a term
Yeah.
that they, do, and it's 3 years staggered. So Rick, yours is up in 2020, are you gonna stay on?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're okay. And I am gonna check with the 2 other individuals that are already here, that is still posted for planning or for budget committee.
Yeah, so how many we gonna? Yeah.
So we have 4.
54. Yeah, there's 54.
Cracking for me, probably. What, you have a quizzical,
I do, because I thought that the budget committee was, 3-year terms, 3-year terms with a number leaving every year.
yes, staggered.
So is it gonna be 4 this year? I guess it would have to be, sorry. Somebody on there would have to be a second year.
Yeah, so, yeah, so these are, you're right. So Rick says 2020, James Walker says 2020,
Yeah.
so I'll have to go back and look at that.
Well,
Okay.
the other one, we have to be 3, so, well, one will have to be 21 and one will have to be
Okay.
22, right? So
I'll
you're
go
gonna
back
have to
and
stagger
look.
when we add to the,
And see
Correct.
yeah.
when, who, what.
But every year there's somebody new.
Right. We're rolling,
Actually, Dave would be gone this year, so then,
right.
well, I don't know how they got the 2 extra 2020.
Well, that's what I was saying, is I'm gonna have to go back and take a look and see when and who was appointed. So that's one of those committees that we really need to start doing seats, C1, C2, C3, so we know if someone pops off of it and says, I can't do it anymore, that if you're filling that seat, you may not have a 3-year, it may only be a 1 year.
I have both seats up and on there.
No.
You're already on there.
Okay. Rick, is this about your position?
It's about the budget committee. At the last year's budget committee meeting, there was a request to, I believe Jim Cooley at the time, that we get an earlier warning about the budget meetings start earlier in the year.
Yes.
Because we ran out of
We
time.
ran out of time, and we're gonna get going on that shortly.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for the reminder. So the next is the RTMP, so that's the Rural Tourism Marketing Program and Advisory Committee.